Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Government has formed a committee to look into the legal and the technical issues behind the idea of one nation, one election, which means to hold the Lok Sabha and the state assembly elections simultaneously. Now, this idea is not new. It has been discussed in the past by multiple panels. In fact, the Election Commission has also submitted a report on the feasibility, but it cannot be done without the constitutional amendments. A million-dollar question is that why has BJP started talking about the one nation, one election idea once again and all of a sudden? Now, is it implementable? Many people are saying that the government has called in a special session of the parliament from 18th to 22nd September. Can that bill be brought in? And within the 5 days, can that bill be passed? So all these are very sticky issues. But again, the most important and the most significant question is that how soon is the idea, if at all it is implementable, how soon will it start working? What about the logistics? What about the other issues related to the one nation, one election? I'm joined by former Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. O.P. Rawat, who during his tenure has submitted a report to the Modi government. So thank you so much for joining on the Federal. So my first question to you is that, of course, this idea is not new. But why do you think that the Modi government has all of a sudden once again started talking about one nation, one election?
That's, I think, a political question, and it will be very difficult for me to handle it. But I think they might have done some homework because this all started in 2015. But in fact, it is thought of long back. In fact, after 67, when these assemblies went out of sync with Lok Sabha, Election Commission itself proposed in 82-83 that make some amendments so that we can bring back all these assemblies in sync with the Lok Sabha elections. But that also could not materialize. So since 2015, Election Commission submitted the report that it will be feasible to hold one nation, one poll with some amendments to the Constitution, some amendments to the RP Act, some time and money for manufacturing and procuring EVMs and VVPATs, and a little addition to paramilitary forces because more paramilitary forces will be required. Maybe they have done some homework and maybe they are in the state of readiness, and that's why this committee headed by former President of India has been notified.
Right. But Mr. Rawat, do you think that just on the eve of general elections, almost now the countdown has begun for the general elections, does it stand to benefit parties like BJP when you hold the idea or when you start talking about the idea of one nation, one election? Do you think that it will help BJP politically?
I don't think, because if you see 2019 elections, when Lok Sabha and Odisha, Andhra, Arunachal Vidhan Sabha elections were held together. In Odisha, I studied the election results. I found that in one polling station, there were 2 EVMs, and voter voted the local party 3/4 of the majority of the house. And on the other EVM, almost 1/3 of the seats to the National Party ruling in Delhi. So that shows the maturity of our voter, because Odisha doesn't boast of a very high literacy or very high level of development. Even then, the voters are mature enough to decide as to who is doing good in which seat of government. So I don't think it will be, maybe there is a conjecture that this year it is going to be a drought year, big drought. And the Lok Sabha elections are generally held in April, May, when the drought is at its peak, heat and crop failure and all those things. Maybe that may be a sort of point.
Right. But what are the challenges which you see while implementing the one nation, one poll theory?
There are many challenges, but the main is amending the constitution. The constitution prescribes the tenure of Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha, and there is a provision of Article 356, which is about president's role, means early dissolution of the assembly. These articles need to be amended. That is what Election Commission had suggested in 2015. Niti Aayog and Law Commission, they also supported this argument that these articles will need to be amended. So that is the first challenge, because these constitutional amendments would need ratification by more than half of the state assemblies.
But given the fact, Mr. Rawat, given the fact that BJP does have a majority, and in the past, so many bills have got passed. So had BJP seriously wanted, they would have brought in the amendments. What stopped them? So do you think that BJP is really serious towards this idea?
Yeah, that is a very valid point. If they were serious, they would have amended. But nothing much has been done on that. Right. Neither the amendment of the Constitution nor the amendment of the RP Act.
Right. So, which means that they've just floated this idea to divert attention from the current issues, maybe because there was an India Alliance meeting yesterday. There has been a talk about the Adani 2.0 fraud scam. So, is it just to divert the attention of the media that they floated this idea once again, and it will go in the cold storage?
From the first-hand experience of yesterday, I think media went whole hog for the kite flying. So maybe you are right.
No, but if you look at the way the situation, because you were there on the hot seat in 2015 when you yourself submitted a report to the government, and it's from 2015, now it's 2023. And why do you think that all these years the government was sitting on it? If you had given them the feasibility idea, you had told them that, look, this is how it's going to be implemented, and they all sat all this while.
Actually, they were working on it, because I heard through newspapers that they were holding meetings, trying to bring all the parties on one platform, building a consensus. Some minister was appointed for this. All those things were done. Similarly, Parliamentary Standing Committee also took it up and examined and recommended that yes, it is feasible and government should think of it. Law Commission was also examining and submitted their reports. So I think things were moving. Only thing is that the finality was not visible. And we don't know whether present notification constituting a committee headed by former president can bring finality to this issue. So
do you think the finality still is evasive, right? Given
it is not in sight, so to say.
Okay. Also, some people are talking about the fact, and I think the Law Commission has also said that you cannot bring in a one nation, one election till the time, you just set aside the constitution completely, because it will lead to some kind of a presidential system of governance. Do you agree with that it will probably change the parliamentary system of governance and it will lead to some kind of a presidential system?
I don't think that is, in fact, height of absurdity, because we had one nation, one poll for almost 2 decades, 1952, 57, 62, 67. It is only after 67 that these assemblies started falling out of sync with the parliament election. And that's why the problem arose. And Election Commission proposed itself in 1982-83 that this is causing a lot of administrative dislocation, a lot of expenditure, a lot of work. So please amend these sections and these articles so that we can go in for simultaneous elections. This was the Election Commission's suggestion. And it was not accepted or worked on. So it just languished. I don't think that it will lead to any of those kind of apprehensions.
No, but Mr. Rawat, during the decade in which the nation saw simultaneous elections, like in 52 and 62 and You were giving us examples. Why do you think that the one nation, one election didn't work at that point of time? And what is going to be the change now if it is implemented again?
Now the change is what Election Commission suggested in 82-83, that you have to initially bring in sync these assemblies which are not in synchronization with the Lok Sabha poll. For that, you will have to either curtail certain tenures or extend certain tenures to bring them in sync. And the second thing would be after initial adjustments, suppose you have one nation, one poll, but suppose 3 assemblies get dissolved prematurely, then how to bring them in sync again? So all those things were examined by the Election Commission in 2015, and suggestions and alternatives were given that either you can do this or you can do that, because that's in the political process. Election Commission could not give a final sort of alternative. So they gave alternatives that you start the political process of building consensus around one of the dispensation, and that is what is needed to be done.
No, but supposing if it is implemented, the idea of one nation, one poll is implemented, and given the legal amendments which have to be made, say, for example, dissolving the assemblies, don't you think that there will be a political pushback? Say, for example, Karnataka, which has just elected its new government. Now, if the assemblies are curtailed, won't there be a political pushback? And how will you ensure a level field that for all the parties? Because you have a government at the center which has a brute majority. How does one ensure the level playing field then?
Actually, this will have to be explained to all the stakeholders, like Election Commission's report. It doesn't say that assemblies which have been just elected or have just completed 1 year have to be dissolved. No, Election Commission's suggestion is that all those assemblies which have a long tenure left can continue. And then to synchronize, their term may be extended, irrespective of which party is ruling. It's only those assemblies which have got just 1 year, 1.5 years left. There, they can be consulted that this much time we can curtail and take your polls now. We can say fix a time limit of 1 year. Similarly, there is a proposal that suppose after synchronizing initially, if some assembly gets dissolved after just 1 year, then hold election for that assembly for 4 years. Independently. Hold that election for 4 years, and then again it gets in sync with the Lok Sabha election. But if it gets dissolved after 4 years of tenure, then don't hold any election for that assembly. For 1 year, you can either have president's rule, or you can either offer that all the parties who have representation in the assembly can have a representative government for that 1 year.
Right.
Those kind of suggestions were there.
Right. But Mr. Rawat, you did mention about the constitutional amendment, and that is a big challenge. But more than the challenge, it looks like a lack of political will on the part of the government. Because if they really wanted the amendments to take place seriously, they would have done it. They've got enough majority. But apart from the legal challenges and the lack of political will, what I'm saying, now it also looks like a logistical nightmare. Installing so many EVMs, VVPATs, then additional paramilitary force, which of course you mentioned in the beginning. But is it not going to be a logistical nightmare which will not be easily implementable also? The government will have to do a lot of homework. And can it be done if the government is thinking of bringing that in before the 2024 elections? Do you think that is possible?
In a short time, it is not possible, but it won't be a nightmare, logistical nightmare, because Election Commission has adopted technologies, has adopted the systems which work for any eventuality. And getting EVMs and VVPATs for that much number of constituencies when simultaneous polls are held, that may take time. But my figures, my information is dated. It is 2018. At that time, Election Commission had only around 2 million EVMs and VVPATs. Whereas for simultaneous polls in one go, if you go in 2 installments, then even that 2 million may be sufficient. But if you want to go whole hog in one installment, then you need 3.5 million EVMs and VVPATs, means almost 15 lakhs EVMs and VVPATs. Now that will require a lead time of around 1 year, 1.5 years for manufacture and procurement. That is the thing. And for paramilitary forces, as many companies you can raise, because that can dictate only multiple phases. If you can't raise many companies, then there may be 5 phases, 6 phases, 7 phases. Like today also in UP or West Bengal, it is 7-phase election. So if you have adequate paramilitary forces, it can be 4 phases or 3 phases. But if you can't raise in that much time, then it will be multiple phases. So it will not be a logistical nightmare.
Mr. Rawat, there are other questions as well. People like D. Raja, the CPI leader, he himself was saying that, this government it seems is obsessed with one nation, one election, one nation, one religion, one nation, one tax, and they want to completely destroy the diversity of the government. That was his point. But the point is that, do you think that still, the idea of a fair election looks completely skewed, and many parties have leveled charges that there is no level playing field when it comes to the opposition parties. There is no fair play which is happening. So in the absence of a fair play, do you think it will be justified on the part of the government to bring in a one nation, one election?
I won't like to enter into political arena, but if you see our elections for last 70 years or more than 70 years, you will find that while raising a finger, raising issues, criticizing during the campaign period, when the results are declared, all the stakeholders, all the political parties, they accept the people's verdict. And the number of election petitions, etc., filed is very minimum. Compare it with any other democracy in the world. Like in the most developed countries' democracy, after the results were announced, these were not accepted by the losing candidate, and his supporters stormed the capital. It doesn't happen here. Same thing in Africa. One of the democracies, after the election results, there was a civil war kind of situation. So when unfairness is there, when rigging is there, when that kind of issue is there, then those symptoms erupt. Whereas we have been, and in fact, noted historian Mr. R.C. Guha, Ramchandra Guha, he observed in 2017, and same year, even Supreme Court observed that although you have not enacted, Parliament has not enacted the law as promised in the Constitution, but so far, election commissioners appointed have been very, very fair and politically neutral. And R.C. Guha said that one singular achievement of our democracy.
So, but broader view, of course, I would agree with what you're saying. But when it comes to things like model code of conduct, we have seen time and again the opposition parties leveling charges, saying that when it comes to the model code of conduct, Election Commission doesn't seem to be doing enough. So, in the wake of allegations like these, and then suddenly this idea of one nation, one election, so of course the opposition parties will feel cheated, and they will feel that there won't be a level playing field for them.
If any of those allegations had any merit, any evidence backing, they would form a basis for election petition when election will be annulled. Like I read today's newspaper, one election in Karnataka has been annulled just because wrong information of assets was filed, and this was reported by opposition party, and this election has been annulled. So instead of crying foul for no basis, if you have any such evidence that yes, this thing wrong has happened, violation took place, and Election Commission was not fair in dealing with it, you just raise it in the election petition and you will get justice. So there are systems. I don't think that it will hold any water.
But is India ready, sir, for one nation, one election? Is looking at the political, the social, the logistical aspects and the entire framework in which the country is operating, do you think in 2024, one nation, one election is an idea which is implementable?
As of now, no, absolutely no, because unless the amendments are made, Election Commission is bound to go ahead with holding elections to all those houses whose tenure is ending in next 6 months. So like Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh and Telangana, Mizoram, Election Commission is on their toes to hold these elections because the Constitution and RP Act prescribes that. So
Right.
unless you make those amendments, elections will go on like this.
But many people, Mr. Rawat, are saying that, this one nation, one election idea has been mooted by the government, to try and postpone the polls. That, they will probably, by some alibi, they will try and postpone the polls and try to bring this idea, maybe coinciding with next year's Haryana and Maharashtra assembly elections. They will try and hold the general elections also. So does that look likely? That possibility?
I don't think, but if that is done, opposition is not at a loss because out of these 5 states, opposition is in power, gaining 8 months more. So I don't think that it is a valid guess.
Why do you think that the opposition parties are opposing this move? Are they opposing it just for the heck of it? Because the idea, of course, Modi government has said that, it brings down the expenditure and it leads to more of governance because then the parties can focus on the governance. The idea is very, very positive. But why do you think that the opposition parties are opposing it?
Actually, what I have heard through media and through newspapers, basically their point is that regional parties will become irrelevant because the national issues will overshadow the state level issue, local issues, and that will be detrimental to the health of regional parties. Maybe they are right, but as I gave you an example of Odisha going in polls with the Lok Sabha, 2 different results were thrown by the poll. So, but they may be having their own points, which I'm not aware of.
But what you're saying that the regional parties have a sense of fear that, they might become irrelevant. So then that again, in a way, destroys the diversity. What D. Raja is saying that, it's an idea which will destroy the diversity of the country. So the regional parties, if they are not there, then what does this idea look like then? It is not, doesn't look like a good foreboding for the country.
Because I personally have a view that regional parties are not at risk because Odisha poll results show this very clearly that our voter has matured enough.
But what if the Odisha result is not replicated in other assemblies? Maybe Odisha voter is mature, but what happens if this kind of a same result is not seen elsewhere?
I think we can go in for an empirical study for that and find out. If any decision is to be taken which has certain advantages, why not we work out that also to satisfy the political parties? That is why Election Commission had suggested that government should always work for bringing all the political parties on the same platform.
No, but as you are saying that there should be an empirical study, which means that maybe 1 or 2 states can be taken as a pilot study before at all the country is exposed to a system like this.
It is not for exposing the country to like this. It is only assuaging the fears which are not really well-based, well-founded of the regional parties. That is the only thing, nothing else. If you can convince otherwise, it's okay. If you can't convince them with the results, because so many states go to polls, in Andhra Pradesh also, you see local party won Vidhan Sabha and national party won Lok Sabha seats there. So it is almost everywhere. You can analyze that data and convince the regional parties that your fear is not really well-founded.
No, but what happens if the opposition parties are not convinced of this idea? Can the government
it will be difficult.
Go ahead?
Then it will be difficult because unless most of the parties are on board, bringing about certain changes to Constitution will be difficult. And second thing, Election Commission always works on a consensus. Like we devised a machine called Totalizer to emulate the mixing of ballots of Mr. T.N. Session in 2008-9. But we could not evolve a consensus of political parties, so we have not implemented that, even now.
But Mr. Rawat, given the fact that everybody is speculating and guessing that probably in the coming special session, a bill on one nation, one poll can be brought in, do you think that the government can really expedite this process?
I don't think, because the 5-day session will deliver that kind of historical thing is not possible.
It's not possible. So which means that it's just an idea which has been floated by the government.
No, it is the notification appointing a committee headed by former president. Only that is the key. Because of that, people are having a hunch that something is cooking. Something is cooking.
But that still doesn't ensure that the government is going to bring in a one nation, one poll system.
Because that might be a move to bring in consensus among the political parties. That's why a person like former president has been chosen. That is what people think.
Right. So consensus, of course, the government is giving hints that it is in for a consensus. They will try and reach out. But for now, it's very clear that the government is not very serious. And the finality of one nation, one poll is an idea which is evasive for the moment.
Right now, it can't be sort of implemented in a few months. That's the scenario. If at all something is decided now, and these moves for amending the constitution and the law are undertaken, then yes, of course, down the line, a year and a half, you can do it.
So would it be fair, if you are judging the government, and we are raising questions on the government, so would it be fair to ask that, of course, government is trying to put up a semblance of seriousness by appointing a committee under former President Ramnath Kovind, but how they will implement, when will it be implemented, that is still very, very far-fetched.
One can't say far-fetched, because this shows the seriousness that former president is heading, and some timelines will be there. So things will move faster, and things will move visibly. That yes, things are happening.
But it definitely can't be as fast as, doing things by 2024 elections.
A few months, yeah. It can't happen like that in a few months.
So definitely not for 2024 elections, right?
Yes, because those elections are also just in 8 months.
Okay, so which means that it's an idea which will be, might be unfolded post 2024.
But suppose they take up the alternative of having 2 installments. That one installment in 24 and one installment in 26.
Okay.
That is Niti Aayog formulation.
Right.
May be possible. So beginning may be made.
Okay. So the beginning can be made in 2024 is what you're saying. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Rawat, for joining on The Federal. It was wonderful having you on the program. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this interview, subscribe to our channel, send us a feedback, and stay tuned to The Federal.
Subscribe to The Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.